Welcome back to Made to Grow, the podcast for SME manufacturers brought to you by Flowlens MRP and MES software. I'm Rich Dale, your host and founder of Flowlens, the simple, scalable MRP system designed for SME manufacturers of industrial equipment, machinery and devices. Over the past few months, the team at Flowlens has been deep in conversation with manufacturers, transformation experts and business leaders, distilling years of change management experience into a new book, Fearless Digital Transformation. This book isn't just about adopting new technology, it's about how to navigate digital transformation without fear, ensuring your team, processes and business foundations are set up for success. Fearless is actually an acronym breaking the transformation journey into its key stages: foundations, engagement, analytics and data, requirements, legacy data, execution, sustainability, and finally security. In this episode of our podcast, we're diving straight into the first step, foundations, because without the right groundwork, digital transformation is doomed to fail before it even begins. To help us unpack this change management process, I'm joined by Angela Fumpson, founder of White Tiger, a specialist consultancy in quality management, leadership and business transformation. Angela has spent over 25 years helping manufacturing and engineering businesses successfully navigate change, and she knows exactly what makes or breaks a transformation project. This is also the first of a two-part conversation, where we'll start with the foundations of change, and in the next episode, we'll pick up with Angela again to look at how to actually roll out change in a way that sticks. And if you want to go even deeper, Fearless Digital Transformation has just been released digitally, and you can download a copy for free right now at flowlens.com. Let's get into it. Okay, so I'm delighted to once again welcome Angela Fumpson to the Made to Grow podcast. Welcome, Angela.
Nice to be back.
So thanks for coming back. Some listeners may remember our discussion from Series 1. It's hard to believe we're now in Series 3, where we touched on some elements of what we're going to talk about today to do with change management and process mapping, and how to really coalesce around a clear vision for what you want in your business. But before we do that, could you just remind our listeners about your background and who you are?
Yeah, can do. So I've got a background in mechanical engineering and chartered in quality management, process improvement. My passion at the moment is mentoring. So I love to mentor leaders and managers to get the best from their business and to allow it to deliver the way of life they need. But in the toolbox, obviously, is making sure that the structure and the process and the systems are right, which is why we end up talking a lot about process mapping and how you make these changes and digitization. Excited to think about and talk about today how you implement that change.
Absolutely, and full disclosure, Angela, you're mentoring me, which has been great fun over the last couple of months. So it's definitely been a eye-opening and challenging, but in a good way, kind of experience. So I'd highly recommend for anyone to get in touch. But don't use up all your time. I need to be selfish about that. So moving on to the topic. So we've talked a lot about how change management kind of makes or breaks projects, and obviously from what you've just described, and with Flowlens and the work that we do, it's not just about the software, it's about an effective change in the business. And sometimes we can go out of our way to not sell Flowlens to a company where we don't see the readiness there. And it's an interesting statistic that 70% of digital transformation projects typically fail. And that's often due to a lack of leadership support. But what are the 30% doing right? So that's partly what we want to dig in today. And this is actually going to be a new experience for me, because we're going to start talking today about the planning for change, and then we're going to talk also about execution for change. But that's going to be episode 3 of Made to Grow. So So we'll be carrying that theme on in the next episode.
Yeah, I think it's very important to talk about the pre-stage planning, because even if you've got the most amazing system, if everything's not prepped and the people aren't ready, then it could go badly on the project and the software, and reflect badly on the software, when actually it's the preparation and the people stuff that's much needed. There's a lot input in people first in the digital projects.
Well, picking that up, I mean, we touched on it briefly there about the lack of leadership support is one of the reasons why
Yeah.
projects fail. Is it worth just kind of elaborating on those other reasons and particularly the people aspect?
Yeah, there's an interesting fact, I think, about the leadership. Obviously, even with leadership buying, sometimes the leaders might not be involved in the project. Now, unless they're completely educated and they feel safe and confident with the change project, there's a great saying that I picked up in the automotive industry, and they used to ask on the wall, what shadow are you casting? So whatever energy and everything you're bringing to work, that impacts everybody else. So if the leaders have got a little bit of concern, even though they're not expressing it, the team running the project will feel that.
Mm-hmm.
So we need to make sure all the leaders are on board. They also understand, they're getting the feedback, the reports they need, and then everything will run a lot smoother. So even if the top leadership is not involved in the project, they still need to be educated. They still need the buy-in, and they still need the knowledge to know that the project is running well, because their influence affects everybody else in the team.
I think even from a small team perspective, sometimes we see leaders that are in the thick of it, which is great, and others that are sort of saying that's somebody else's baby, and I'm, maybe a salesperson or I'm engineering, and the leader is kind of very focused on that, but actually they have KPIs that they're working towards,
Yeah.
that the new systems will be supporting,
Yeah.
and processes that the new systems will be supporting. So even if their interaction with the actual system isn't day to day, their activity will be driving some output of that, and therefore, in other words, there's no excuse not to be part of
Yeah.
it. And often that's fair enough. You said yourself that confidence in technology isn't always there.
Yes. Yeah. You've got to build a good case, I agree, but you have to give them the confidence and the dashboard and the feedback to know that things are going well. And also, they need to be very good at delegation. If they're not involved, how is the team understanding the tasks? Do they understand the clear path? Do they know why they're doing it? What is it? What's in it for the team? They need to understand all of that. So it's not just leadership; it's how they delegate as well. If they're dropping in and out of the project and micromanaging and quite fearful, then the project is going to be undermined.
What would you say is the correct way to delegate a project like this?
I think you need, obviously, you need clear objectives, goals, and everything needs to be very clearly mapped out. But it's having a clear leader and an owner for the project, somebody responsible for reporting, for keeping the team together and reporting up to the leadership.
Yeah, I mean, we find that uh, almost 100% of the time when there isn't that person, you're chasing cats or herding cats rather. It's just impossible to try and make progress because there's nobody who's actually taking that final level of responsibility for things getting done. Never mind then, the coaching and the interaction with team members who are actually feeling the pain of the change, and they have their own
Yeah.
concerns. So
Quite often that's delegation, because the leadership team, they need to allocate that person time. So if that person is trying to take on the ownership and the management of your digitization project alongside their other role, and they've not been given space, they're not going to be able to do due diligence and actually take on responsibility for that project.
100%. Moving into the world then, once you've got that delegation in place, what about the rest of the team? How do you, none of us likes change.
No. I think there's a lot of, you have to dispel the fear. I mean, you have to ask the obvious question in the beginning. Have you got a culture in the company that is very embracing of innovation and change in this first place? Because if you're trying to prepare your team and you're throwing this project into a company that already has history with change or failed projects, or the culture's not, um, you know, conducive to embracing change, you're already starting yourself with a project that's going to have resistance. So, how do you work on the team and what's happening before you even introduce technology?
Yeah, because as you remarked earlier on, employees who have experienced a past failure are even more reluctant to get involved. So I suppose having that self-reflection to know that actually this isn't the type of thing that this business has done before, whether it's a technology change or anything else for that matter, having the kind of presence of mind to know where the business is at. Because again, sometimes systems can be seen as a silver bullet, and it might be a positive thing because the business has suddenly had an influx of orders or some new innovation has come good and there's new demand, and that puts process or strain on the processes.
Yeah.
But the worst thing you can do then is say, right, let's slap a system on this, because if you pick the wrong system or obviously not brought people along with you, it can actually make the bigger picture change that you really need to make impossible.
But you have to listen to people first. You have to know your team. You have to know your individuals and what their history is and how they feel, because there can be a lot of fear about, role replacement even. Is my role going to exist if suddenly all these systems come in? So if you don't listen to people and actually get them on board to understand why and what it's going to do and how it's going to help, and also the important thing is not just supporting at the start, supporting all the way through. Just a funny story, because I got taught this by a little exercise. So we got people to write their name or a sentence on a piece of paper and actually plot how long it takes them. So the more you write it, the quicker you get, and you get a nice graph. And then we asked them to write this only every other letter. But if they got it wrong, it didn't count in your team. So you had to write it. So obviously they were getting quicker. But on the chart, then there came a point where everybody slowed down. But that was because their brain was going, actually, am I getting this right? I need to check it and be a bit more thorough, because if I get it wrong, it's a failure. So they started to think about the change in and where they're getting it right. So the graph actually slowed down and then sped up again. Mm-hmm. And that's the same, because people start off with the support, but if you don't keep the support going, at some point they're going to start asking questions. This is more clunky. I'm not there yet. Is it worth it? Is it working? And that's the time you need the support, not just at the beginning.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And that'll come into our next episode in a lot more detail.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, coming back to that sort of change-friendly culture piece, how do you prepare the employees for change? Long before you've picked the software and are ready to roll it out.
I think you need a culture of trust in the start. I know we were chatting the other day about David Rock's SCARF model. It's are they being fairly treated? Is everything we do, is it affecting their status, their relatedness to people, all that kind of thing. So you need to start understanding how you operate in the business itself. What is the culture? How do people feel? And that's a deeper exercise, a deeper study. But you do need to have an element of trust in the business first.
The Made to Grow podcast is brought to you by FlowLens, the simple, affordable MRP system specifically designed for SME device, equipment and machinery manufacturers. Our top-rated cloud-based software can help you cut down on wasted materials, time and money, and eliminate the chaos of running your manufacturing with spreadsheets and hope. Our customers have reported savings of over a day per week per person in their business by cutting out needless admin, duplication of work and countless mistakes. Plus, lead times are shortened by up to 75%. And after hundreds of successful implementations, we've got the blueprint for manufacturing success nailed down. Head over to flowlens.com for a quick video tour of the software and to hear from more manufacturers like you who have transformed their businesses with Flowlens. Now, back to the interview. And I mean, every business is different, but few businesses are versed in the kind of activities that it takes to even understand where you're at.
Yeah.
And you know, we obviously come at it from the point of view of changing your software, and Flowlens isn't like, it's not like changing from MailChimp to Constant Contact or some. It's a core business system, so people could have moved on and retired in the time it takes to sort of move from one generation of a system to another. So again, I probably have this etched on my gravestone. Map your processes.
I was just going to say the same thing.
Because it brings the people together. If you do it right, and obviously the bigger the company, the harder it is to bring everyone into a room necessarily at the same time. But it is a way to actually build empathy, where sometimes, particularly across departments, who are annoyed at each other for things that always go wrong, and there's no cure for that. But actually, whenever they both sit back and look at what one is doing to the other and realize we could both be saving ourselves some time here, that's a really positive exercise.
It's coming to a consensus, isn't it, of opinion. Bit like Hoshin Kanri as well, you're agreeing what everybody needs and how best you can support each other. And I don't think people do that enough. They don't sit down and go, okay, the next, it's back to the 90s now, internal customers, the next person in my process is, Fred in this department. And what is it he needs to receive from me in terms of information and everything else, and what format is the best way? And people start talking to one another and understand what each other does and what they need from each other, and they treat each other a bit more fairly. Mm-hmm. So the internal customer concept for me has never gone away. And when you start mapping processes, you start to really understand what each other needs. And then you start to come in with templates and consistency. So people receive the information in the same way, in the same format, at the same time. And we start to get some standardization so that everybody can understand it.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, some of the most successful projects that Flowlens has delivered in recent times have all started with that process map, and in some cases, the customer has arrived, at their inquiry with us, and they've done all of that. They've got a clear idea of it. They've got that buy-in from the team. In other cases, we do that for them. We can talk to the people, get those conversations going, and then help understand, where those blockages are, where the kind of misunderstandings are, and it's a fun part of the job, actually, because then those people who are obviously maybe naturally suspicious of a software vendor who wants to sell them software, can actually see that we're looking for the right solution for this company, and sometimes we'll walk away, as I said earlier, but it'll help us overcome their challenges quicker because we get that innate understanding of how the business is operating.
But you take a deep, it's understanding that need of the company. But the same thing is with people, with the team. So if you can get those forums together with your teams it's a bit like objection handling in sales. What is it? What is their objection to having this system put in? Understand it, listen to it, to their views. And if you can get that kind of forum going in, not just with the customer, but with the teams, then everyone will be on board because you've got that two-way communication. You're listening really well to them as well as, educating them on what's happening.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. On that point, as particularly as the organization gets larger, like how do you overcome the sort of lack of understanding as the needs and the aspirations of the business get translated down to each level, and and that sort of skill and experience at the coal face, at the Gamba, as the lean colleagues like to say, how does that travel back up?
I think you've said the right words. It is about translation down to every level. So for me, it's not just about the project plan. There needs to be a communications plan, and in any organisation, there needs to be an order to that, because there needs to be a timing to it, because whoever isn't in the know, they will make up their own story. That's just human nature. So it is about making sure that you've got the right timing and the right communication plan down the tiers, and it's in a language that actually means something to their role. You will not have the same explanation for the board, for the managers, for the supervisors, as you will for people at the coalface. They need to understand, what is it doing for me and my team? What do I need to know?
Exactly. I mean, with some of the work we're doing on Flowlens 2 with the shop floor app, you know, it could be regarded with suspicion that this thing is, I'm supposed to tell it when I've started something, and but actually, the idea is firstly to empower the person at the shop floor level. What do I do next? How do I make the most of my day and feel like I've made an impact today? And I can see what's on my work to list. I can see what I can start. And actually, if if that ties properly into KPIs, that if the business is driving towards a certain level of profitability, well, the time that I've tracked that has gone into that particular build, that particular job, actually means something towards the overall goal of operating more profitably and then more sustainably.
Yeah, I mean, the only way that has an impact is obviously if you then put in something like profit share with the employees.
Mm-hmm. And that's a topic for another another podcast. But I think it's the kind of goal that companies are aspiring to with excellence is to be able to have a playing field or a balanced scorecard that allows you to feel like that you're making a profit and people are making an impact on that.
Yeah.
So we when we kind of assume, all right, like maybe I'm a tech guy, so we sort of assume that everyone has a phone in their pocket and they're used to technology these days. But people still, some people are still wary of technology and the digital change. You touched on one of the big
Yeah.
aspects of what worry is this machine going to take over my job? Um, but what methods are there to overcome those kind of psychological barriers to change?
I mean, you can always do company, like internal training, like awareness, webinar, bits and pieces that you could do workshops within the organization. But I think it's, the most important thing is the visibility of the project. Storytelling is a powerful thing. Where has the company come from? What is it going to do to help it take to the next level? What's their part in it? Help them feel safe. There will be a lot of speculation about AI, but it's about what the company's doing at the moment. But if you wanted general sort of, training on what it is and how it works, then you can have workshops internally. But I think the story and the trust and the reasoning behind it and the listening and the forums you do with your teams to build the trust is important. That's probably my best tip.
Yeah. Funny when you mention stories, it reminds me of a senior sales rep in a company who had been used to kind of running his own CRM effectively in a spreadsheet for the previous 10 years and deeply suspicious of putting the information into Flowlens, and probably one of the last people to engage with the project, which isn't unusual because we tend to focus on the ops side first anyway. But when it came to this process of building the trust of this isn't going to steal your pipeline. Other people aren't going to steal your leads, and it actually turned into a real positive because he didn't know what he didn't know. He didn't know what was possible,
Yeah.
and apart from the pure time saving of of updating leads was much quicker. You could do it on his phone. He didn't have to get his laptop out. But all the other intelligence that it gave him to do with what had been sold previously and even service tickets, that kind of thing, was a real eye opener. for them.
Yeah.
So, and sometimes these things take time to be able to manifest.
Yeah.
But you can teach an old dog new tricks, I suppose.
You can. But you got over the initial, is it safe? Is it secure? That's obviously one of the most important things. If people feel safe, they feel secure, and then they have to feel confident that they can do it. And then that's down to very clever training, because we can't overwhelm them. Like you say, there's so many possibilities, but people need to sort of be onboarded very slowly. And then it's when you're in a system, because you've got no idea how powerful it is, then you can start playing, then you see the possibilities, then you can start working with it. But it's important to start with the basics, because if you overwhelm people at the start, they're just going to think, well, I can't do this. And it depends how you train as well. I had an instance where I put a new booking system in, and it was the old case of, well, I've got a receptionist that's been with me forever. She's not really going to embrace new technology, but I've got this, young receptionist. She'll be fine. She's used to technology. But actually, I just sat with the receptionist for the morning, and it was just the risk and the thought and the fear of getting it wrong that was stopping her progressing. So she needed a different type of training. She needed just somebody to sit in the background while she's learning and while she's doing, just in case, to know that she wasn't doing it wrong. So there are very, very different delegation styles. They're very different training styles, and we just need to know. And actually, she was the best on the system. Her attention to detail was great, but she just needed to get over the fear of getting things wrong and what would happen if I get them wrong.
Yeah, we kind of underestimate that it's not just about read the manual. Underestimate the ways in which people learn, and those kind of, well, we mentioned it earlier, the kind of psychological barriers are
Yeah.
very hard to decipher. So making assumptions is
Yeah.
costly.
Yeah, and people don't come to work to make mistakes. They come to work to make a difference, not just to get a paycheck. So you don't know how making a mistake impacts people. And different people work differently, and they might have had a very different history with a different company with a different culture. So we have to bear in mind, how they're going to need training, how they're going to need hand holding in the beginning.
So, Angela, we've covered quite a few things there, and it probably feels like we're
Yes.
moving towards the execution phase. But for now, would you kind of summarize? I don't always put it in the negative, and what these are the things you must do to avoid failure. But what are the kind of key positive takeaways from this that businesses can seize to make the most of the technology opportunities that are there and actually empower their staff?
I think so. If we start with what we've discussed first, so I think, prepare people for change, because change isn't easy. So build the trust up first, then build your narrative, build your story. What is the company's story? Where are we going with this? Why do we need it? Handhold through change. Make sure the support is continuous and the conversation is two-way to support them. Training is not a one size fits all. Just make sure that we look at that, and just celebrate. Just keep people involved, keep the people in the know, and celebrate, because change can be very easy. I know there's a lot out there that's very scary about change. It can be easy as long as you go on it together.
I like it. Well, I think that's a good moment to take a pause. So, Angela, that summarizes it neatly, and I think it's a good time to pause. And thank you so much for your time today and what we've discussed so far. Um, if in the meantime, before we release episode 2, how can our listeners get in touch with you?
I'm happy to link up on LinkedIn. Yeah, just share my profile. Always happy to have a conversation. Or there's my company website is www.white-tiger.co.uk. So yeah, have a little look on there if people want to know more about me. But yeah, reach out on LinkedIn.
Brilliant. Thank you, Angela. Well, till next time. That was a brilliant conversation with Angela, and honestly, I think this is such an important topic because so many businesses get this bit wrong. A few things that really stood out for me. 1. Change isn't just about new systems or processes, it's about people. If they don't buy into the idea of change, it won't work. 2. Process mapping is key, not just for efficiency, but for understanding where the problems really are. 3, and probably the biggest one, leadership sets the tone. If your leadership team isn't fully on board, don't expect anyone else to be. Now, this was just the first half of our conversation. In the next episode, we're going to look at how you take all this prep work and actually implement change in a way that people embrace, not resist. And if this conversation has got you thinking about how to future-proof your business, you'll want to check out the new book, Fearless Digital Transformation. It's packed with insights from experts like Angela and manufacturers who've successfully gone through the digital transformation journey. You can download it for free right now at flowlens.com. So, if you've ever had a system rollout go wrong, or you want to make sure your next big change actually lands, don't miss the next episode. Make sure you're subscribed, and I'll see you next time.